I'm currently going through some emotional hard time. Sometimes I feel hopelessness or being upset for my situation throughout the day. So should I note it and put my whole thought into that experience until it goes away, or should I just shift my mind onto the rising and falling of my stomach? I feel that I still haven't let go of my loss, even though I'm using the meditation as a replacement. Where did I hear this recently? Someone said a very similar thing that on the chat here. They asked me a question, and they said that meditation was kind of a means for them to escape the problem. So I was trying to explain, they're practicing and they keep thinking about these thoughts keep coming back, right? And like the meditation is bringing them up or so on. And they were saying, I was saying, well, isn't it great that the meditation allows you to see these things? And he said, well, no, meditation, I guess it gives me some kind of relief sometimes. And kind of, as you say, it's like a replacement or a means of shifting the attention away from the experience, or a means of finding peace in hard times. But I said right away, directly in response, that that's not what meditation is for. Meditation is for you to learn about your problems and to learn about what it is that you're experiencing. So it's not quite an answer to your question, but something that I would question in your mind and be sure of yourself that you're not doing this, that you're not expecting something of meditation. And in general, that's really one of the big key points that we have to understand in terms of meditation, is that we really shouldn't expect to get anything out of meditation, that we shouldn't expect to create anything out of meditation. We're trying to take what is already there and understand it and straighten it. The mind. The Buddha said straighten the mind. Well, that means straighten out our habits and our reactions and our ways of responding and reacting to things, as opposed to interacting, as opposed to being with. That isn't an answer to your question, but it's something that I would talk about. I would try to stress based on the fact that you're saying you're using meditation as a replacement. Meditation is for the purpose of coming to terms with your emotional hard time, the emotional stress and difficulty. Maybe I'll address the question and then turn it over to the panel, the other panelists. Let me just briefly, I'll give some pointers here, because the question is quite direct. Should you note it all the time, or should you put it aside and go back to the stomach? You can really do either. There are no hard and fast rules, but you have to assess what is the result of doing one or the other. If you're able to be mindful of it, and actually if you're able to be mindful of it, it should dissolve quite quickly. It may be that you're not able to be mindful of it, and that after a while it makes you so stressed out that it actually brings on more stress in your mind and gets you to a point where you feel like you're going crazy. If at that point you decide, you've been acknowledging it for some time, it's not going away, it's overwhelming and so on, you can come back to the stomach. Start with the stomach again, and something like starting over. What you don't want to do is avoid it. You don't want to, I'm not going to touch that, I'm not going to be mindful of it, it's just too difficult. But it's like getting a running start. Start way back up and start here, rising, falling, and then when it comes up again, slowly catch it piece by piece until you're able to face it head on. And there are other techniques as well. It doesn't mean you have to come back to the stomach. One of the greatest techniques when a person is overwhelmed by something is to do lying meditation, because, as I said, that's where you're the most relaxed. When you're stressed, when you're overstressed, you can try doing lying meditation. It's a way of retreating from the stress, finding something that's easier for you to deal with. Okay, this is easier. Still maybe have some of the emotions, but you'll find that they're easier to deal with. They're not as intense, because you feel more peaceful. You feel better lying down, more relaxed lying down. That's an example. You can stop meditating, take a break, come back and try again, and so on. But there are no hard and fast rules in that sense. But I would like to have answers from other people, so maybe you have some thoughts on this.
Yes, I do. I think you should be very open with the moment to see what is necessary. Sometimes when you note upset and hopelessness for a long time and it doesn't go away, it is not good to stay there, because you eventually start to indulge in it without knowing it, and you think you're just noting it, but you're kind of feeding it with it, and you feel good in it, and you have not noticed that yet. So in such a case, when it does not go away, it might be good to focus on something else, because there is always something that can be prominent as well. And when you go back to the rising and the falling, for example, in my experience, it brings you a good stability. When I'm, for example, lost in emotions, what of course happens, and it's kind of whirling around, and I can't really catch it, or it's too much. Then going back to the rising and the falling of the stomach brings me. I called it the other day kind of in a position of in the eye of the hurricane. There it's peaceful and you are alert, and you can from that position observe what is going on around without getting hurt by it, or without getting carried away by it. So yeah, I think it's good from time to time to go back to the rising and falling then.
Sure. I think there's really no hard and fast rule, and you roll with the punches. You consider you're in a boxing match. There's no answer whether should I punch or should I dodge. Sometimes you have to dodge, sometimes you have to punch. Sometimes you have to even take a punch, and sometimes you get knocked down and you get back up again. You know? That's the story, the song goes. But you shouldn't. I think you shouldn't have a hard and fast rule, and that's what I would caution against. Because suppose someone takes the hard and fast rule that when these things come up, I'm going to go back to the stomach. If you take that as a rule, then it's easy to see how it might lead to developing aversion towards it, or a habit of avoiding the experience. If you force yourself, you take it as a rule that you have to stay with it, then it can drive you crazy, and it can lead you to not want to meditate. It can lead you to feel incapable of finding any benefit in the meditation. Even entering into the jhanas in that sense is good. Mahasi Sayadaw said, if you've practiced jhana before, then it's great, because you can go back and feel peaceful again and get your confidence back up and go out and fight. But the other thing I would say is that actually staying with it, and suppose it makes you really angry and upset, because this is often what happens. We give the meditator an entire day to themselves, and we're not there sitting with them telling them what to do, so they do everything wrong. They'll go way to this extreme, way to that extreme, and it's actually not that big of a deal as long as you have a teacher to pull you back on track, because it teaches you something. So the meditator said, oh, I was sitting with it and it just made me more and more angry. And then you can say, well, what's it like to be angry? Now you know what it's like to be angry for a whole day. So what we're trying to do is learn, and the best thing you can learn from is your mistakes. It takes a long time, but you learn from your defilements, really. Oh.
Sometimes you have to go through these things to really get over them, to be so fed up with them, to know them again and again, and then you thought, oh, I got over it, and then it comes up again, and you note it again. Then at one point, there comes the moment when you really get fed up with it, when you let go of it because you just saw it enough.
But I think the key to all of these answers is that you have to be dynamic. You should never have a hard and fast rule. It's so, I mean, the path is, how long is the path? And you've got to know every trick in the book to get through it, right?
Can we say that Samma Vayama, right effort, is a good measurement for that?
Samma Vayama?
Yeah.
I believe the word they use is kusalupaya. Do you know this one?
No.
Kusalupaya is knowing the right thing to do at the right time. It's having all these tricks. Knowing the right trick to use.
That's good as well.
Kusalupaya. It's the word that they use in the Mahayana to explain, or in some Buddhists will use to explain, doing of evil deeds for a good purpose. I've heard this argument, that this is that argument about lying to save someone's life, for example. This is considered skillful means, doing an evil deed for the purpose of goodness. But that's not how it's understood in the early text. The kusalupaya. Kusala means wholesome or skillful. Upaya means a device or a means, I guess, a stratagem, you could say. And it's this kind of thing where what do you do when you're really stressed out? If you know the kusalupaya, it's to lie down, because lying down is actually something we tell meditators not to do. It's not a good thing, but in certain instances, it's the right thing to do. When you're really stressed out, do lying meditation. There was one monk, this crazy monk that I always refer back to, who slit his wrists, lit himself on fire. At one point, he came to our teacher, and you got to hand it to Ajahn Tong. Nothing can faze him. This monk came up to him, and Ajahn Tong says, "How's walking? How's sitting?" He says, "Ajahn, I can't walk. I can't do walking." He says, "Well, fine, then just do sitting." And he says, "And I can't sit." "Fine, then just do lying meditation. I can't lie down and he's explaining why he can't walk, why he can't sit, why he can't lie down. And the rest of us are like, "What's he going to do then?" And he says, "Then do standing meditation." And he goes, "Yeah, I can do standing." and he ended up doing standing meditation. He couldn't lie down because he was going crazy, really. He was contorting himself into all these shapes. The things I had to deal with this guy was an interesting experience in psychology.
May I come back to the Samma Vayama?
Mm-hmm.
Because it is, when I remember correctly, it is to raise the wholesome states that are there, and
the wholesome states that haven't arisen, bhavana, develop them. The ones that are already there, anurakana, protect them. The evil states that are already there, pahana, abandon them. The evil states that are not yet there, maybe that's anurakana, I can't remember, guard against them. But there's so I clear what you're saying, that from time to time you do one or the other is the idea.
Yeah, I thought having that in mind as a measurement for for the meditation in general.
But there is a better teaching that is more from time to time-ish, because the Samavayama, it's difficult because it actually is supposed to all come together at the same time, right? It's all, being mindful really does all of that at once. It can be seen in that way, but there's one really good teaching that I think is given in several places. Probably it's in the Anguttara Nikaya. I'd like to find it again. He said, the Buddha says, a skillful meditator or a skillful monk knows when it's appropriate to encourage the mind, when it's appropriate to discourage the mind, when it's appropriate to keep the mind, stay the mind, stop it, and when it's appropriate. See, there are these 4 different times. You really feel this as a teacher. When you're teaching people meditation, you have to be exactly this. So sometimes a meditator will come to you and you have to say, yes, good, keep going. Encourage them. Or more like, no, you're doing fine, that's really not a problem. You're learning more. See, you've learned more about yourself. Encouraging them. Sometimes you have to discourage them. They'll come to you and say, wow, I had a great meditation. I'll say, oh yeah? You like it? Oh, I like it. I loved it. Do you know what liking is? Liking, well, that's greed. Is greed a good thing? What does greed lead to? It leads to addiction. No need to like things, and so on. So pull them back. Sometimes you have to be, keep them on course. It's kind of, it's playing this game, but this is how the Buddha taught us to train ourselves. When the mind wants to leap out to something, you have to be able to pull it back. When the mind is lazy or so on, you have to have ways of encouraging it. For example, contemplation of death, reminding yourself we've only got a short time to live, and so on. That's a really good teaching. I'm not sure about Samavayama. I mean, obviously it can be interpreted in that way, as from time to time doing one or the other. But most important about Samavayama is to see our effort as comprehensive, and also to see effort as not being just push, right? You have to be able to, it's about balancing, and it's really all about developing mindfulness to overcome the defilements, to have a wholesome state of mind.